you doing?
All right. Y'all don't have to get up crazy early in the morning for these meetings. That is why we have the mentoring meeting.
That's all good. Like to be involved. How about we can?
Hey, Josh.
Hey there. So I'm gonna actually go briefly over the session at KubeCon.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, yes.
So we had our session at KubeCon. There were maybe a couple dozen attendees, which was actually pretty good. Community sessions on the whole did not have great attendance.
Oh, okay.
And actually ours had better than most.
Nice.
Particularly we actually had a crowd of Indian folks who were interested, who are potential mentees.
Awesome.
Who are really interested. The video worked really well.
Oh, cool.
So Nate did the thing where he played your video and he put it in the corner and advanced the slides and actually looked really good. I don't know how good it looks on the recording, but live it worked really well.
Oh, awesome. I still haven't seen it myself yet. I think some of the team have, but I haven't quite got around to it.
Yeah,
so.
it might be messed up on the recording because I recall the recordings are not great with embedded video.
Okay.
I actually watched it and it didn't come out too bad.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Jay was shining in his absence.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. So we had some interest in, potential mentorships and other stuff that you'll probably be hearing from more when the mentorship meetup rolls around or when we announce LFX, etc.
Okay.
Wouldn't really leave it open for any sort of direct way for people to get involved in the New Zealand effort specifically. We wouldn't actually. The talk didn't actually tell them, if you're interested in this, contact this. So we just told them to get in contact with us on mentoring in general.
Yeah, I wasn't, as I mentioned, it was sort of at that point where it's, because I've been talking to different people about, whether a boot camp sort of format in terms of developing it that way would be better, or, talking about working into existing curriculum. And yeah, based on feedback, there's still not a lot of clarity about the best way forward that's going to create the most sort of engagement. So I don't want to, create something that was too sort of, this is the sort of next sort of step. So I just sort of encourage people to reach out and get connected and happy to sort of discuss things there. And I've got a few pretty key meetings over the next couple of weeks that's going to give a lot more sort of clarity around that as well. So yeah, that's a great response. Thank you. Let's keep people engaged, as you said, the working group or whatever in the meantime, and can loop them in as things progress.
Okay. So for the tag contributor strategy pod, it was actually really useful, mostly from respect that, they had this project pavilion. So there were like 30 projects there. And so the pod really became a place for the projects to walk up to us and ask questions about stuff that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
While I was there, these questions were mostly governance related. I would have to ask Nate whether or not he got questions or discussions around, and Hippie, whether or not he got questions and discussions around mentoring. Oh, actually, wait, I'm not sure that Hippie actually was at the pod that long. He got sick on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So not COVID, but something else communicable. So he hid out in his hotel room for half the conference, which was very sad.
Yeah. He was quite devastated.
Yeah, so that he doesn't forget it, I sent him off with a tag contributor strategy t-shirt for you, Jay.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So whenever you actually get to see him,
Yeah.
he should have that.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah. The so yeah, I mean that's about KubeCon from the sort of tag CS perspective. We did not do a maintainer circle this KubeCon.
Okay.
I honestly, partly because the CNCF staff was overwhelmed, because usually the CNCF staff gives us a fair amount of logistical help with the maintainer circle, and they were just not prepared to do that this KubeCon.
Okay.
And once, given that we don't have anybody who's actually maintainer circle lead right now, without staff help, I was just not going to be able to pull it off. The so I mean, the nice thing I would say, at least for the projects that send their people to KubeCon, they are recognizing that this tag is the place to come if they need help or advice with their project, which is what we wanted, right? So if they need to know something, because you saw that for some of the other stuff, like the question about, hey, somebody wanting to do a testing platform that's easier to contribute to. And they come to us first, and even when we can't, don't have the answer, we have places to suggest that they ask the question again. So I think the awareness campaign spearheaded by Catherine has actually had some results.
That's
I
great.
actually saw Catherine's lightning talk as well.
Yeah, how was that?
It was quite good. Yeah, it was. I'm not sure how because there's a lot of lightning talks in a row. There's a lot of people in the hall, so I think it's a nice way to get a lot of people to come hear what you say, because not just you, it's a lot of people. So yeah, I think she had quite a wide audience. That was because some of the KubeCon, because I just did virtual, obviously. So some of the events was very low attended. I watched some random things all over, and it was good to see the one that Catherine did was quite well attended. It might be a tip for the future. Lightning talk session have a full audience.
Yeah, that's awesome. With all the queries that are coming through at the pod, and you said the majority of them seem to be around governance, was there any particular pattern in terms of what people were inquiring about? Or
yeah, no, I mean, that's I was there.
Oh, okay.
Partly because I put it out on social media and KubeCon Slack, etc., that I was going to be there on Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, and if people had governance questions, they could come by. And not really. I mean, governance questions do, like they have for our meetings and stuff, fallen into a pattern of usually projects start to think about this when they're planning on applying for the next maturity level.
Okay.
In KubeCon, in the CNCF. So for example, Cryo already has their graduated application in. They want us to review their current governance documents.
Okay.
Which I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. Eventually that'll actually become standard, as in with the CNCF TOC, we're going through overhauling the levels, particularly overhauling how you get into each level. But we're started with Sandbox. And next we're going to take on incubating and have a standard due diligence template and a standard way that the tags interact with the application. So, and for us, for tag CS and security, we basically need to comment on part of every application, if you follow me.
Yeah.
Because every application needs to have, you know, a review of it as from a standpoint of maturity as an open source project, which would come from us. And then every you know, projects also need a security review at 2 different levels, depending where they're graduating, right? At incubating, tag security needs to sign off that they have some way of dealing with security holes.
Okay.
And at graduated, they have to actually have a full security review. So it's just those systems are not in place yet. But it's nice that we currently have a TOC that's very interested in making all of the progression into a well-documented process. So, you know, for you folks, mentoring is sort of detached from that process, if you follow me, because a project can have an interest in participating in mentorship projects at any stage of their development, and really should at any stage of their development, if you follow me. That is, a sandbox project is neither more nor less eligible to, for example, have an LFX internship or a mentorship cohort or something else. The one thing that happens is when we get up to looking at graduated, projects should additionally be looking at how do they promote people to maintainer, which is a mentorship activity. And you know, and which means that at that point they ought to have had some mentorship activity for new contributors going already, right? They should have already had success with mentorship of new contributors, because if you don't have new contributors, you can't. If you have no new contributors, you're not going to have any new maintainers. So from that respect, like if we're starting to look at this and we're looking at project trajectory, where I would really hit projects with a, hey, have you considered mentoring programs, et cetera, would be when probably right after they get accepted to incubating. I mean, it's not bad to reach out to everybody at any time, but like right after, we don't want to, they get hit with a whole bunch of stuff on their way to incubating. So I think it'd be better to hit them after they get accepted to say, hey, look, you're at incubating, you want to think about graduated in a year or so. And the way you're going to get to graduated is that you need to grow your contributor community. And part of the way you do that is mentorship. You know, so if a project goes into graduating, they immediately get into mentoring new contributors. Some of those new contributors stick around, and then they can turn into, you know, reviewers and maintainers. That's how I would see it. That's how I would see it working in general.
No, that's all really good to know, because I mean, even I think was it guys from the Pixie project who sat in one of the previous meetings and was sort of, you know, trying to build their understanding about how to put, you know, their governance and everything together. Just seeing and hearing that side of things was helpful. But yeah, just in general, I think that's beneficial, because Ria, Nate and I are in the process of sort of reorganizing the mentoring repo at the moment and trying to identify all those sorts of pieces of information. It's going to be important, you know, considering who's going to be interacting with these repos at what sort of stage, and what is the sort of, you know, pertinent information you're going to need to be able to sort of progress at that level. And I know from you know, even Hippie's, some of his previous or recent interactions, I know sort of mapping out that, as you said, that further trajectory into maintainer, like helping people to, you know, see that whole sort of pathway, and, you know, what those steps are going to look like is going to be key, alongside any of this, you know, the new mentees and everyone's just sort of entering into the space. So no, that's good to have that wider understanding.
Joss, is there any way that we can verify historically, because that was something that Jay and Nate and I was discussing in one of our meetings, is there a way to determine the trajectory that you explained, that you're going to get mentees, that they're going to get involved and some stick around? Do you have any sorts of a measure of how many stick around?
You can track individual people. I mean, the problem is that if you're looking at statistics, a mentee doesn't look different from other contributors.
Yeah.
So you actually would need to sort of tag mentees individually. We actually have something in DevSets that was specifically built around Kubernetes reviewer mentorship cohorts. It wouldn't be that hard to spin off a copy or to modify it so that it could actually look at all kinds of contributions. Because like for mentoring entry-level people, right, what you want to do is you want to be able to put in a list of names and then see what happened to their contributions after that.
Because it would be interesting. It would be a nice marketing tool if you have a number that say, statistically speaking, 25% stick around. So if you want one, you need to be willing to mentor at least 4, something like that, which would be a pretty cool number to be able to throw out there.
Yeah, and I will have to admit that I have been hold on, I need to put some notes in here. I've honestly been reluctant to do that, and here's the reason why. I find maintainers get frustrated by the idea that they'll have even 50% drop off.
Oh yeah, that as well.
And my personal experience is that drop off is actually higher than that. Because you know, however sincere people are, first of all, at entry level, a bunch of mentees are going to be students or recent students. And they don't honestly know what they're doing with their lives. So a lot of them will end up going in a different direction where it doesn't make sense to keep working on the project.
That's why I threw out the number of 25, because I would be surprised if it's more than 25. It's, I think it's just the nature of the industry. And if you're going to get 10%, I think it's actually a high. So you're right. It might be discouraging, but on the other hand, it might be. Let's be realistic. You need to throw out a lot to catch one. And then people know, okay, I need to go at this big time. This once-off effort is going to be disappointing because he's likely the mentee is going to leave, because that's just the way of maybe they enter into it a little more. Yes, I know I'm going to lose it, but some I'm going to catch. So
yeah, and I would say from experience that in a process where the mentees are well vetted, like 1 out of 4 is probably as good as you can do.
Do you know of any articles or documentation that sort of speak to that? Because that's probably a pretty common sort of concern for people in terms of, you know, and we've been talking about it a little bit as well in terms of that investment versus return, you know, for people. Like, is there anything that starts to sort of
there isn't. I mean, nobody's published anything about mentorship within open source projects that I can find.
Okay.
So, like, there's a lot of articles on mentorship in general in like the workplace and that sort of thing. And there's a bunch of general stuff about contributor recruitment in open source projects, but nothing that focuses specifically on mentorship. Partly, I think, because up until very recently, partly led by Kubernetes, mentorship within open source projects has been very ad hoc. It would be really interesting to find out, say, if the GSOC folks have overall statistics, because there's a program that's been running long enough at scale that they really ought to.
And in general, they should be, well, hopefully open to sharing some of that, or hopefully.
What Nathan and Jane, I touched on, I did a small sample of one intake, and basically went and looked for the people's GitHub handle and looked for the LinkedIn, and just at a glance from the outside see where they are. And it is interesting to see that the few that I looked at, just about all of them pursue into next level career. So for the mentor, for the mentee, it is an absolute good win all the way. but I didn't. One could actually use that if you take the time, use that research and say, okay, so many stick around in open source, go look at their Git. But that would be, I think, can't be automated. You'll actually have to go, and there's not that many. It would be, if you keep on looking, it would be interesting to see and write up some sorts of, oh, this is what we see. 50% stay within open source, but not with their specific project, and there's cross pollination or whatever. So that, but yeah, somebody needs to sit down and go through all the GitHub repos and go, or GitHub handles and go through all the LinkedIn profiles and make some sorts of sense out of that. And it would still not be a perfect science; it would just be a good feeling.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think you're hitting on why it doesn't exist yet. Because really, in a lot of ways, what we need is we need to find an academic who's actually interested in this topic, because it's going to take a lot of time. Because the data is not available in machine analyzable form yet, right? So
it might be if there's the reason why I only did a small portion, because there's no point spending a couple of weeks on it and there's no appetite for the information. So if there is, I'm willing to do a bit of a collection of data and a table of something that can turn into a write-up of some sort and say, oh, this is the interesting things that we discovered.
Sure.
So that sounds like a 2023 thing.
Okay.
It might even be a project as well for Alex to help with it on.
Yeah.
Oh yes, you can actually because we're getting somebody in at II next year that's going to do some. You know better, Jay.
Yeah, so we I think I mentioned in discussing some stuff with one of the local tertiary providers, and basically one of the local polytechnics is going to place a student with us as part of work integration project, and they basically left it open for what they might do to get involved. And I think in addition to sort of getting them introduced to contributing in general, having a specific sort of project where he can sort of help and sink his teeth into is going to be beneficial. So something like this might be really good for him, because again, they're all new to open source and the sort of nature of it. So I think if things like this is going to be important, one of the things that came out of the discussion was helping to again further clarify and map out that journey in terms of what it looks like for people to step into the space and all that sort of thing. So I think that might be directly relevant for him as a as a first project. So that's definitely something we can make a start on. Cool. And from the again to the pod, I mean, were there any sort of key insights or learnings in terms of in general what worked well and what might be built upon in the future?
Well, I think what we did, which was to put out messaging about who was going to be at the pod and when they were going to be there, et cetera, and that we were there. The other thing that Catherine did in particular, was that when things were slow, she actually toured the project pavilion, talking to each project in their pod.
Oh, cool. Don't come to me, I'll come to you.
Yes, because it was really easy, right? We were all within like 100 square feet, right? Or, this 30 square meters there. So it made it easy to talk to all of them. The whole it ended up being a really good resource for us, and a good way to reach out sort of directly. And if we run a maintainer council next, maintainer circle. Next KubeCon, I'm going to use the project pavilion to directly recruit people to go to it, because it's honestly, because one of our biggest problems in this tag has been how do we reach maintainers, right? Because we're talking about a pool of people each of whom gets like 1,000 messages a day across the various platforms. And so there really is no way that we can reach them reliably, right? No email, chat, anything. We have to sort of splash it all over the place and assume that, only 20% of anybody's going to read it. So weirdly, going around the project pavilion has actually was a more successful way to talk to maintainers than any other way that we've accomplished.
Wow.
So
And so on that, there's no sort of regular sort of forums, even intermittently throughout the year or anything where maintainers themselves connect.
yeah, no, we have Maintainer Circle on Slack.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good because it's low traffic. If we're going to promote things, we can get the staff to mention them in some of the other areas that maintainers attend. There's a fair amount of crossover between ambassadors and maintainers, so I can generally send stuff through ambassadors. But for example, the maintainers email list, the one that goes out to the people who are officially listed as maintainers with the CNCF and that sort of thing, according to Amy, that clearly, based on stuff that she sent out that is important to the projects, has very low read rates. So by the way, for one of the things for mentoring, and mention this next thing, is one of the things I want to talk about, probably not till January at this point, because we're about to go into lots of winter holidays here in the Northern Hemisphere. And as a result, start having difficulty getting anybody to show up for anything.
Yeah.
But to look at, say, maybe in mid-January, doing a maintainer circle around mentorship and mentorship programs.
Cool.
I wanted to do that earlier this year, but the workload around everything has been kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
So and particularly because when we started this tag, we had 2 people who were in charge of Maintainer Circle, and those folks are gone now. So
No, that's a good focus. That's cool. Mariana and I are catching up with Nate actually later today, so we can put that on his radar as well and perhaps start brainstorming some ideas in terms of what that might look like and what we can do to get a jump on it. So
yeah, I mean, part of it is, the big thing that you're going to hear from maintainers and stuff, I guarantee you, is we'd like to do mentorship, but nobody has time, right? And so one of the things we want to come prepared with, I'll tell you, is that one of the big hurdles that we need to talk about sort of an organized effort for is helping projects turn sort of ideas into internship projects. Because the critical part, the thing that the project maintainers need to supply that we can't get any other way, is a mentor, right? Is that you need to have a mentor, preferably more than one mentor. Without that, you can't have a mentorship.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like we need to look at ways of, hey, if the project supplies a mentor, how do we get them help to do everything else associated with the mentorship, so that we don't have the case of there's a mentor available, but they never get the sort of mentorship off the ground. And the funny thing is that we designed a number of programs within Kubernetes to actually handle this issue. Most of which have now died because the way that we did it was to basically offload a lot of the work of the mentorship onto tag contributor strategy volunteers.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we've lost about 60% of our people power in tag contributor strategy. And so, the result is that a lot of those programs are not currently in operation because they required somebody in tag CS, and tag, not contributor strategy, contributor experience. It required somebody in contrib X to put in X, number of hours to run them, where the number of hours was not necessarily small.
And that would
So
be the biggest reason for that attrition rate.
yeah,
Okay.
the and well, mostly what it is that in the early days of Kubernetes, companies were cheerfully willing to hire full-time community managers and put them into the upstream community. And now not so much. So the
Did they share any reason as to why that was?
yeah, simply that were regarded as a cost center, that were like 2 stages removed. Community managers are like 2 stages removed from income. So in other words, what we do bears on how good the product is going to be a year from now.
Mm.
And companies are very focused on how do we sell the product that we have now.
Now, yep.
Yep. And actually, at companies where open source upstream is very integrated, like Red Hat, the community managers actually do help sales.
Yeah.
But in most tech companies, that's not the case. In most tech companies, sales is not used to making use of open source communities in a way that's successful. So, so the result is that community managers are not regarded as having a bearing on product success.
Mm.
So the yeah, and so as Kubernetes transitioned from the next generation technology to this generation technology, the interest in spending money on things that would pay off in 1 or 2 years went down. And that includes community managers. So
Yeah, and basically the next Kubernetes or the next technology like Kubernetes in this space would trigger the same wave of interest.
Yep.
Then.
Yep.
So we need to look out for who's the next Kubernetes.
Yeah. Yeah. And hope that we can get in there to actually have it be somewhat organized. Oh, hey, Rishit. So Rishit actually ran a session around rebooting CNCF students. Rishit,
cool.
do you have mic?
I do.
Hey there. So this is Ryan and this is Jay. I think you probably saw Jay on video, but
How you doing, man?
hey.
Good. How about you?
Good,
So I'm
thanks.
glad you could join. So Rishit has been restarting CNCF students, which was a community when CNCF first launched, and then it went completely silent. And now Rishit has restarted it.
Awesome.
No, that wasn't me.
Wasn't you? Oh,
No.
Was
I
that
mean, I know
Kunal?
of CNC. Yeah. It probably might be him. I know of CNC.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting presentations mixed up. That was Kunal's presentation. Sorry.
I was going to say, because I connected with Kunal a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I was just like, oh, you're
Okay.
involved as well. All good.
Yep. So. Okay.
Did you speak though?
Yep.
Sorry, Rashid, did you still have a presentation?
Presentation for what? Sorry, I was just like trying to see how the TAC contributor strategy meetings are going.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, welcome.
Hey there. Yeah. So normally this would be a governance meeting, but we kind of dealt with the governance business quickly, particularly because Dawn's not able to be here this morning. And the projects that wanted governance advice mostly got it from us at KubeCon. And because Jay and Ryan are here, both of whom work on the mentoring working group, We've been discussing some other stuff because they were not able to attend KubeCon. So
It would
The,
be would be keen to both see you in Amsterdam, though. Let's see how that rolls.
okay,
Yeah.
that would be cool. So yeah, and one of the things is if you're planning on going to Amsterdam, then think about, do we want to do a specific mentoring related activity for Amsterdam?
I think that would be great.
You know, and you know, we have to say, okay, what can we do that will have useful output and will also be attractive to maintainers and project contributors and other potential mentors, you know, in an environment where they have conflicts for every hour of the day.
Yes.
So,
So what are some examples of some of the approaches that we might be able to take? I mean, obviously, you know, face-to-face engagement was successful, but I mean, you know, would it be perhaps like holding some sort of information session? Would it be something a little bit more interactive? Would it be like what are some of the options that we have available?
yeah, well, I mean, one thing I can obviously see is, and one thing that would have useful output would be a help session to actually, okay, hold on, let's take notes so we don't forget this. Like a help session to actually prepare internship project descriptions.
Okay.
Problem is that would have useful output, but one of the questions is, how do we make it appealing enough that we will get a reasonable turnout from project contributors?
Yeah.
Obviously, the other possibility where it's much easier to get people to show up would be something targeted at mentees.
Okay.
Right? Even though mentees are a small percentage of KubeCon because of the cost of attendance.
Yes.
They have fewer time conflicts. And so are much more likely to show up for a session. But then the question is, what would we do?
That would still be worthwhile for their time as well.
Yeah, what would we do in order to create useful output for the session? Right. I mean, ultimately, the most useful output would be to get them, you know, on the road to being hooked up with mentorships.
Yeah.
I think something that might be useful, because you always, if I look at my recent in starting in mentorship, if I look at the project that went out, there's way more mentees applying than there's projects. And then out of the projects, the project basically choose the one that suits their project the best. And it might be a good thing to have a talk about how to become the mentee of choice, what training, what options. And because Jay and I yesterday went through some Linux Foundation trainings because to help Alex to onboard, and there's a lot of free training available on, and maybe have a discussion even if you don't have the financial resources, there is these and these and these options, and how to prepare yourself to be that person with the right skills. Maybe that's a possible angle.
Yeah.
Definitely. How long before KubeCon can we get the schedule of all the talks and things? So ideally we could, you know, perhaps try position things at slots where there's, you know, like find the best windows, that it's not going to have as many conflicts.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be kind of up to the staff to figure out. I mean,
Yeah.
mind you, they've run this speed mentoring thing for
Okay.
ages since Paris originally set it up.
Yeah.
And like this time it was right before lunch on Friday.
Okay.
I don't know how well attended it was. So, I mean, this would be basically a special session, right? That we would arrange with the staff, et cetera. It wouldn't be like a normal in-program session.
Yes.
And one of the things to discuss there is, would this be an alternative? Would this be something different that we're trying instead of the speed mentoring? Or would this be in addition to speed mentoring?
Okay. So if we would have a bit of a brainstorm of ideas and things in advance, it might be good at some point to connect with Paris and perhaps get a bit more insight in terms of what that experience and uptake was.
Yeah, you're welcome to. Paris was not involved in it this time around.
Oh, okay.
It was just effectively run by the event staff.
Oh, okay.
And from that perspective, like if we come and we say we have this different idea and we think it'll be better than speed mentoring, they will be happy to turn it over to us.
Okay.
It's just we first want to be confident that we do think it's a better idea than speed mentoring. Or is it something complementary to speed mentoring? If you follow me?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, basically the way the speed mentoring works is, we have, a bunch of tables and that sort of thing, and people hop around. And what mentees are generally looking for is how do I get started information?
Yeah.
Which can honestly be hard to find online. And with the right mentee, it can make an enormous difference to have that information. But that assumes mentees who are sort of technically prepared, if you follow me.
Yeah.
That is, the ideal mentee for speed mentoring is somebody who is already a coder or a documentation person or a community management person or project management person, who is just looking at how to get into a new project.
Yes.
I mean, like, for example, when I did it for Los Angeles, I think. Yeah, Los Angeles. One of the people was Hilba, who was a full-time programmer for I don't remember where. And she was just, so she was already somebody who wrote Go code, and she was looking at how do I get into contributing to Kubernetes. One of the things to look at is if we were looking at complementing speed mentoring, then we would look at, hey, how do we address other types of mentees? Because if you're coming in there and you're like, because I talk to other people who are coming in there and they're like, hey, I graduate from, this and such a CS program next year. How do I get involved in cloud native projects? I don't think that those people really got much out of speed mentoring.
Yeah.
Because they needed a lot more information than they're going to get in 10 minutes.
Yes.
What you said now, Josh, that the main question for mentees is where do I get on? How do I get onboarded? And that was much of where the question started about the mentoring a repo and the format of it, because Nate told us he had this person really interested, and he sent them to the repo and said, just go have a look there. And then later he went there himself and he said, oh my goodness, I sent somebody here and this doesn't give you the answer. And that's why, because over the years, we've just been piling information in there, but it's not properly arranged. So that's part of what we're doing now, and might actually be a good launch at the next KubeCon to launch the changed mentoring repo to say, this is where you go. I mean, you need some information about this, you need information about training, you need information about what skills are needed. Check out the repo, it's been redone. So that might be a good launch of the repo.
Yeah, and that would go back to sort of internship prep, et cetera. Also, if we were doing it in association with KubeCon, like you could think about having a work session at KubeCon for projects. And like I said, there, the work and the outcome is obvious. The challenge is getting people to attend. You know,
Yeah.
when, you know, because you're talking about, once again, people who could be doing 4 other activities at the same time.
Mm.
And we don't need all of them, right? If we got people from 10 different projects to show up, it would be a successful session. The question is, how do we get people for 10 different projects to show up? So
Swag. We must just have the best.
and that's, again, that's going to be much more successful with mentees than it is with mentors. Yep. So swag is not, you know, I came home with what is it, a hoodie, 3 t-shirts, and a hockey jersey, and I wasn't even looking for stuff. So the so I'm not saying that's an insurmountable obstacle. It's just that's going to be the main challenge that we need to think about for that kind of a session. Now, there's no reason why potentially we couldn't do both. And even together with speed mentoring, if you follow me.
Yep.
That is, like, we could run a prep session for the mentees before speed mentoring.
Yeah, definitely.
And that could potentially make the mentees who are completely new to open source or programming more prepared for the speed mentoring session.
So would that be something ideally you do online prior to the whole event, or during the week of the event? Like, you know, perhaps Monday doing a prep session and Friday having the actual speed mentoring, or what was your thoughts around that?
Well, if we're doing a prep session for speed mentoring, I'd honestly put it immediately beforehand.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, I'm not worried about mentee time. I think if we offer an activity clearly targeted at mentees, we will get people showing up.
Yeah.
Because the mentees do not have the same level of demands on their time that the mentors have.
Yeah, of course.
They're not, you know, they're not specifically called into project meetings or CNCF governance meetings, or, you know, speaking at sessions necessarily, or a bunch of other things.
That's probably a good approach.
For.
If you have a well-worded, nicely marketed session, specifically, we're going to tell you all about how to become a mentee. Then you'll probably have a bunch of people. And then if you have a few mentors available just after and have an hour of their time, and you do a round robin with, and even if you have too many people, you do like speed mentee of a group of 3 at a time, and say, okay, I do documents. If you want to do documents, this is how it runs. And just do that would actually pull quite a few people if you have a nice pre-session. I like that.
Yeah. Well, and for that matter, I think if we were having a prep session and we advertised that to the potential mentors, so they knew that the mentees would be walking into the session somewhat prepared, I think we might get better turnout from the mentors. Because one of the reasons why mentors don't prioritize this is they feel like it's going to be a waste of time, that they're going to talk to a bunch of people who have no idea what they want to do, or what they want to get involved in. And it's actually important to have those conversations, but from a mentor perspective, where they're like, hey, I want to talk to somebody, that there's at least a 1 out of 3 chance they're going to contribute to my project. It's not delivering that. And so if mentees can walk in having already thought about those questions, then it'll also be more attractive to mentors. So that actually kind of feels like something that we could do.
Ideally, how many mentors would a session like that have, Josh?
Well, I'd find out how many we got for speed mentoring last time. I would say we want at least 10. And not exclusively for one project. And I think we can get CNCF events, et cetera, to help us get the word out.
Yeah, cool. When is Amsterdam next year? Do you know?
Third week of April.
April.
Correct.
Yeah. So
ideally, if we had some sort of activity or session sort of
yeah,
framed out in terms of the delivery format and everything, and we could potentially start promoting that even a month out before then.
yeah,
So people are aware. And okay, cool.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, all this sounds pretty good, and this also help you justify why the CNCF should pay for your plane ticket, since that is a non-trivial amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
So,
No,
yeah,
this gives me.
one of the other specific things that we're going to want to work on, by the way, in mentorship, in the upcoming season is one specific project, which is etcd.
Which is what? Sorry.
etcd.
etcd.
Yep.
Okay.
The problem is for etcd we really need to start with experienced mentees.
Okay.
Because they're in a situation now where it's a mature project that thousands of people depend on.
Mm-hmm.
And the original maintainers for the project have all left, and they left rather abruptly.
Okay.
So we're left with a sort of skeleton crew of maintainers who really can't afford to spend time mentoring anybody unless there's a significant chance that that person is going to move up to reviewer relatively quickly.
Okay.
So we need to start at the high end there. So this is completely not an opportunity for like LFX or anything, or other like student mentees. Also, it's a very difficult project, right? It's a distributed database. So there is a theoretical student mentee who would work, but that would be somebody in a PhD program studying distributed systems.
Okay.
It would not be a general CS student, let alone anybody in high school. Unless they happen to be a genius. So hey, it happens.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I mentored a high school student for Postgres, and by the time he was a sophomore in college, he had overhauled our entire data statistics subsystem. So
Awesome.
but you run across those kinds of people very rarely.
Yeah.
The
That's cool though.
so
Do you have a process for cloning those?
yeah, I know. Don't I wish?
In some git clone commands get more.
Yeah.
Clone prodigy.
So this is something that Nate and I have sort of batted around, which is that we also need to look at working with projects on what we call sort of the upper levels of mentorship, which is the, hey, how do I take somebody who is maybe, say, an experienced open source contributor for other projects, or even an occasional contributor already to this project, and level them up. And do it, and that's a sort of a different set of problems, because the nice thing about entry level people is that at the entry level, folks who have any level of experience contributing to the project can be mentors. Right? At the upper levels, the mentors pretty much have to be project maintainers, who are the people who have the least amount of available time.
Yeah.
So on the other hand, your sort of potential success rates are much higher, right? If somebody's coming to the project, they already have background experience and they already have kind of an idea of what it is they want to do. And eventually etcd will want to have things like entry-level mentorships, etc. But right now they can't afford them because they don't because the only potential mentors are the maintainers. Basically, they need to mentor people up to have an additional cadre of people who could potentially be mentors before they can start mentoring, people who are new to contributing.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that CD will ever be a good candidate for people who are new to contributing just because of the problem domain. Distributed databases are hard.
Hmm.
Unless it's a docs contributor, in which case I could really use them right now. We've already done 2 internships with docs contributors for that project, and we could do more.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's good to know too.
yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're at kind of at time here,
I
and
need
I
to
actually have
drop
another
off.
meeting I have to run right after this.
Cool.
Same here.
So thanks for coming. I'll see everybody on Slack, etc.
Cool.
Thanks for
Good
your
to
time.
meet you
Oh.
again.
What shirt did you get there, Rishi? What did you get?
Okay. Yeah, this is at KubeCon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think you might have seen this. Okay. Yeah, this is Detroit
Okay,
code.
cool. Okay.
Nice.